everybody, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Corin, also known as the Kitten Choreographer. My pronouns are they, he, and I am a teen with a passion for animal rescue, and in particular, kitten rescue. I didn't post again for a while, and that's because I didn't feel like it, and I didn't want to push myself. So, took another bit of a break for me, but I'm back now, at least for this video, hopefully for a lot more. With me today, I have my very purry boy with cerebellar hypoplasia. This is Peep, and Peep gets adopted in 2 days, and I'm so excited we have found him a lovely home, and he's gonna have such a happy life. This video is not about kittens, and that's because there's a kitten playing with something very loud. I had to take said loud thing away from the kitten so that he was not bothering us the entire video. Don't worry, I will give that back to him as soon as I'm done filming. Now, I know today's video is not about cats, and that's because it's about what I want it to be. And what I decided to talk about today is books. So, one other thing besides kittens that I love is reading. I love reading and I love writing, and so I decided just to make a video about reading today for Pride Month. So if you don't know, the month of June is Pride Month, and so I decided today I would give you 10 book recommendations for Pride. So these are all LGBTQ related books in some way, and they range from realistic fiction to fantasy to science fiction, but they're mostly fantasy because that's my favorite genre. I know a lot of book channels kind of don't read the synopsis and just state what the book is about in their own words, but I am horrible at that, and I will 100% accidentally spoil the book if I try and share that, and even if I edit it out, I still don't want to take that risk. So I'm just going to be reading the synopses to you guys to kind of give you an idea about what the book is about, and then I will share what LGBTQ topic is talked about most, and I will also kind of share why I like the book. So let's get right into it. I'm gonna share this book first because it is the only book I don't have a copy of, and I'm worried I will forget the book if I don't share it. So this book is Autoboyography. It's a book I got from the library and don't have because I got it from the library and I already returned it. I will say I will link another video that I've done about books in the description below. A lot of my all-time favorite books are already mentioned in there, so I didn't want to re-mention these, so not all of these books are like my top favorite books of all time, but I did enjoy them, so I am still going to mention them in this video, and I hope you guys love them. So I'm going to read the synopsis for this now. 3 years ago, Tanner Scott's family relocated from California to Utah, a move that nudged the bisexual teen temporarily back into the closet. Now, with 1 semester of high school to go and no obstacles between him and out-of-state college freedom, Tanner plans to coast through his remaining classes and clear out of Utah. But when his best friend Autumn dares him to take Provo High's prestigious seminar, where honor roll students diligently toil to draft a book in a semester, Tanner can't resist going against his better judgment and having a go, if only to prove Autumn how silly the whole thing is. Writing a book in 4 months sounds simple. 4 months is an eternity. It turns out Tanner is only partly right. 4 months is a long time. After all, it only takes 1 second for him to notice Sebastian Brother, the Mormon prodigy who sold his own seminar novel the year before and who now mentors the class. And it takes less than a month for Tanner to fall completely in love with him. So yes, I like that book. It's really cool. It's between a bisexual teen and a gay teen, from what I remember correctly. It does talk about religion a bit and how religion affects how some people view LGBTQ topics, so there is some homophobia in there. Just forewarning, but I do love how it talks about writing in there because I do love writing. I loved the combination of the character writing a book while also the story is being told, so that's really cool. That book is also realistic fiction, by the way. Now, to prevent this video from being way too long, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next book. This book is a huge, chunky, big boy. I'm pretty sure it's over 800 pages. Yes, it is over 800 pages. And I loved this book. It's a high fantasy. It's called The Priory of the Orange Tree. And while it is not completely related to LGBTQ stuff, it does have an LGBTQ subplot between 2 women, and so I'm going to go ahead and read the synopsis for you. The House of... Also, I don't know if I'm pronouncing all of this right. If I'm not, whoops, but it's a made-up world, so I hope that's okay. The House of Berthnut has ruled Innis for 1,000 years. Still unwed, Queen Sabran IX must conceive a daughter to protect her realm from destruction, but assassins are getting closer to her door. Eid Duryan is an outsider at court. Though she has risen to the position of lady-in-waiting, she is loyal to a hidden society of mages. Eid keeps a watchful eye on Sabran, secretly protecting her with forbidden magic. Across the dark sea, Tane has trained to be a dragon rider since she was a child, but is forced to make a choice that could see her life unravel. Meanwhile, the divided East and West refuse to parley, and forces of chaos are rising from their sleep. I love this book because it is such a detailed world. It's kind of hard to understand. I will say I didn't completely understand what was going on until like 200 pages in, but it was worth it because I loved the relationships between the characters. I loved the magic system and the dragons in this book. They're so cool. I don't think that's a spoiler, seeing as there's a dragon on the cover, but it's just a really good novel. And while it is very chunky, it's less than reading like a 3-book series, at least. So this next book is by one of my all-time favorite authors. I promise I will buy each and every one of this author's books without question way before release date, like on pre-order, because I adore this author. I mentioned their book Red, White, and Royal Blue in my last book video, which is one of my favorites. I know that's a very common one to recommend, but it is 100% worth the hype in my opinion. I actually have 2 of their books in this video to recommend, and both of these are slightly newer and a little less well-known. This is One Last Stop by Casey McKeeston. I do hope I'm pronouncing their last name right. I'm gonna go ahead and read the synopsis on this one, and this is kind of a long synopsis, so bear with me. For cynical 23-year-old August, moving to New York City is supposed to prove her right, that things like magic and cinematic love stories don't exist, and the only smart way to go through life is alone. She can't imagine how waiting tables at a 24-hour pancake diner and moving in with too many weird roommates could possibly change that. And there's certainly no chance of her subway commute being anything more than a daily trudge through boredom and electrical failures. But then, there's this gorgeous girl on the train. Jane. Dazzling, charming, mysterious, impossible Jane. Jane with her rough edges and swoopy hair and soft smile, showing up in a leather jacket to save August's morning when she needs it most. August's subway crush becomes the best part of her day, but pretty soon she discovers there's one big problem. Jane doesn't just look like an old-school punk rocker. She's literally displaced in time from the 1970s, and August is going to have to use everything she tried to leave in her own past to help Jane. Maybe it's time to start believing in some things after all. So I adore this book. I need to reread it soon because it's so good, and I believe it's between a lesbian and someone pan or bi. I'm not sure though. I probably shouldn't just go ahead and state what their sexualities are because I don't remember, or they're not completely told in the book. So whoops, but it's between 2 women. One thing I love about Casey McKeeston's writing is that it's so funny and the character dynamics are impeccable. I love how they write friendships. It's just hilarious and reminds me so much of some of my own friendships that I have. It's great. I love this. So this is Casey McKeeston's newest book, and it's called I Kissed Shara Wheeler. I think it's pronounced Shara. It might be pronounced Shara, but I think it's Shara. Not really sure though. And this is their newest novel, and it is Women Loving Women. Okay, reading this synopsis. Chloe Green is so close to winning. She spent the 4 years since her moms moved her from Southern California to Alabama for high school, dodging gossipy classmates and the puritanical administration of Willow Grove Christian Academy. The goal that's kept her going, winning valedictorian. Her only rival, prom queen Shara Wheeler, the principal's perfect progeny. But a month before graduation, Shara kisses Chloe and vanishes. On a furious hunt for answers, Chloe discovers she's not the only one Shara kissed. There's also Smith, Shara's longtime quarterback sweetheart, and Rory, Shara's bad boy neighbor with a crush. The 3 have nothing in common except Shara and the annoyingly cryptic notes she left behind, but together they must untangle Shara's trail of clues to find her. It'll be worth it if Chloe can drag Shara back before graduation to beat her fair and square. Thrown into an unlikely alliance, chasing a ghost through parties, break-ins, puzzles, and secrets revealed on monogrammed stationery, Chloe starts to suspect there might be more to this small town than she thought. And maybe, probably not, but maybe, more to Shara too. So this one is realistic fiction. I don't know if I've mentioned that for the others. One Last Stop is not realistic fiction, seeing as there's time travel, but this one is, and it is very good. I really liked it. It's probably my least favorite out of Casey McKeeston's books, but that's because the other 2 are just so amazing, and I do really like this one too. I read it in like a day when I got it. The next book I have is Before We Disappear. This is a historical fantasy. I'd never read a historical fantasy before this, and I loved it, and I want to read more now. But this is between 2 guys, so I'm gonna go ahead and read the synopsis for this one now. Jack Nevin's clever trickery and moral flexibility make him the perfect assistant to the Enchantress, one of the most well-known stage magicians in turn of the 19th century Europe. Without Jack's steady supply of stolen tricks, the Enchantress's fame would have burned out long ago. But when Jack's thievery catches up to them, they're forced to flee to America, where they'll perform at Seattle's Alaska-Yukon-Pacific World's Fair Exposition. But then a new magician arrives on the scene, performing tricks that defy the imagination. Laszlo's show overshadows the Enchantress, and Jack has no choice but to hunt for Laszlo's secrets. But what Jack uncovers isn't at all what he expected. Behind Laszlo's tricks is Wilhelm, a boy who can seemingly perform real magic. As the rivalry between the Enchantress and Laszlo grows, so too does Jack and Wilhelm's affection. Soon Jack has to choose between the woman who gave him a life and the boy who is offering him love. This one was just a book I discovered completely on accident. I liked the cover, so I bought it from my local bookstore. I know, you're not supposed to judge books by their covers, but I do. It happens. It's human. But I loved this book. It was so great. And while this is historical fantasy, it's not realistic in terms of the relationships that people have. Being queer was not popular during this, and neither were interracial friendships, and there's that in the book. And I just wanted to read an excerpt from the author's note so that you understand his mindset going into this book. I wanted to tell a story in 1909 that was full of queer joy, so I took a whole lot of liberties with regard to what marginalized people in 1909 would have been allowed to do, and I'm not sorry. We were there in 1909, whether people knew it or not, and while Jack and Will's story isn't true, I'd like to think it could have been. And I love that note when I read it, and this book is amazing. The first book I'm going to mention here is Iron Widow. This is a queer fantasy. Not fantasy. This is a science fiction novel with a lot of queer romance. There's a polyamorous relationship in this, and that's really cool because you don't see that a lot, so I'm really glad to have seen it in this book. And besides the queer romance, this book is just amazing. I'm like waiting with bated breath for the sequel because I love this book so much. One thing I will say, I have looked up how to pronounce these. I am trying hard to pronounce them, but if I'm not, please correct me in the comments because I definitely would like to pronounce them correctly, and I apologize in advance if I do not pronounce them correctly because it is 100% my responsibility to pronounce things correctly, and if I don't, I want to be able to in the future. In Huaxia, the highest honor for a young girl is to be selected as a concubine pilot. Supporters paired up with male pilots to power up chrysalises, the giant transforming mechas that humanity relies on to battle the massive aliens that lurk beyond the Great Wall. But the honor often ends in death, and when 18-year-old Zutian's sister is killed by an ace male pilot, Zutian signs up to avenge her. The vengeance is swift, brutal, and unexpected, leaving Zutian labeled as an Iron Widow, a much-feared kind of female pilot who can sacrifice boys to power up chrysalises instead of the other way around. To tame her unnerving yet invaluable mental strength, she is paired up with Li Shimin, the strongest and most controversial male pilot in Huaxia. But now that Zutian has had a taste of power, she will not cower so easily. She will miss no opportunity to leverage her and Shimin's combined might and infamy, and survived attempt after attempt on her life until she can figure out exactly why the pilot system relies so heavily on destroying girls' lives, and dismantle it for good. I adore this book. It's probably like my #1 sci-fi book of all time. Not sci-fi series because I haven't read the second book yet, but sci-fi book, #1. Just gonna say that. I love it so much. So this next book is a realistic fiction book with a trans gay main character. I love it so much. This is called The Passing Playbook, and I will go ahead and read the synopsis now. Spencer Harris is a proud nerd, an awesome big brother, and a verifiable David Beckham in training. Well, if David Beckham were 5'2" and black. He's also about to start 10th grade in a new high school, the most liberal one in Ohio, where he can safely be out as queer, but where no one knows he is trans. At first, life at Oakley is almost too good to be true. Spencer has more accepting classmates, a decent shot at starting position on the boys' soccer team, great new friends, and maybe even something more than friends with one of his teammates. But staying stealth comes at a cost when a discriminatory law forces Spencer to choose between spending the season on the bench or publicly fighting for his right to play, even though it would mean coming out to everyone, including the guy he's falling for. This was a recommendation from a friend, and I love it so much. I think it's a very powerful book, and I definitely think it's one that everyone should read. So this next one I think is one of the most important ones on my list. This is Loveless by Alice Oseman. I haven't been sharing the authors, have I? I haven't been. I'm gonna link them in the description below. But this is Loveless by Alice Oseman, and I think this is a really great representation of aroace people, or aromantic, asexual people, people that don't experience sexual or romantic attraction at all. So this is not a romance. It's the opposite of a romance, but it's still very good. So I'm gonna go ahead and read the inside cover for this one. From the marvelous creator of Heartstopper comes an exceptional YA novel about discovering it's okay if you don't have sexual or romantic feelings for anyone, since there are plenty of other ways to find love and connection. This is the funny, honest, messy story of Georgia, who doesn't understand why she can't crush or kiss or make out like so many of her friends do. Everyone seems to say that dating plus sex equals love. It's not until she gets to college that she discovers the A range of the LGBTQIA+ spectrum, coming to understand herself as asexual/aromantic. Disrupting the narrative she's been told since birth isn't easy. There are many mistakes along the way to inviting people into a newly found articulation of an always known part of your identity. But George is determined to get her life right with the help of, and despite the major drama of, her friends. I just love this book so much, even though I'm not aroace, because I think it's great representation, and representation is what so many of us need. So I really, really love this book. These last two books are actually by the same author, but I'm going to share them individually. This is In Deeper Waters by F.T. Lukens. I love both of these books. They really showcase queer joy well, and I love that. They really just are rather more lighthearted. They're younger YA books, but I love them because they're just so... because they're basically fairy tales for LGBTQ people, and you don't see those often. Fairy tales are so often straight, and these are kind of sort of fairy tales for LGBTQ people, and that's amazing. So I'm gonna go ahead and read the back of this. Prince Tal has long awaited his coming-of-age tour. After spending most of his life cloistered behind palace walls as he learns to keep his forbidden magic secret, he can finally see his family's kingdom for the first time. His first taste of adventure comes just 2 days into the journey when their crew discovers a mysterious prisoner on a burning derelict vessel. Tasked with watching over the prisoner, Tal is surprised to feel an intense connection with the roguish Athlin. So when Athlin leaps overboard and disappears, Tal feels responsible and heartbroken, knowing Athlin could not have survived in the open ocean. That is, until Tal runs into Athlin days later on dry land, very much alive and as charming and secretive as ever. But before they can pursue anything further, Tal is kidnapped by pirates and held in a ransom plot to reveal his rumored powers and instigate a war. Tal must escape if he hopes to save his family and the kingdom, and Athlin might be his only hope. So I love this book. It's so sweet. I really want to reread it, and it's lovely. It's great. And now I'm going to move on to the next book because I think my camera's battery is going to die soon. This book is called So This Is Ever After, and I've got to say, I love the artwork on this. The artwork on the back is great too. It's some of the other characters in the novel. It's amazing, and I'm going to read the synopsis now. Arik hasn't thought much about what would happen after he completed the prophecy that said he was destined to save the kingdom of Ir from its evil ruler. So now that he's finally managed to, somewhat clumsily, behead the evil king, turns out the magical swords yanked from bogs don't come pre-sharpened. He and his ragtag group of quest companions are at a bit of a loss for what to do next. As a temporary safeguard, Arik's best friend and mage, Matt, convinces him to assume the throne until the true heir can be rescued from her tower. Except she's dead. Now Arik is stuck as king, a role that comes with a magical catch. Choose a soulmate by your 18th birthday or wither away into nothing. With his 18th birthday only 3 months away, and only Matt in on the secret, Arik embarks on a desperate bid to find a spouse to save his life, starting with his quest companions. But his attempts at wooing his friends go painfully and hilariously wrong, until he discovers that love might have been in front of him all along. I love that book. It's so great. It is so funny and charming, and I am at a loss for adjectives, but it is great. I love it. I'm definitely excited to see what else that author comes out with because I really enjoy their work. So that is all the books I have for today. I hope you guys enjoy those books, but thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, make sure to like it and subscribe for more Kitten and other stuff related content. Also, please make sure to leave any thoughts or questions that you have down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching again, and goodbye!